Welcome back into Drennan Live. Gene Witters now taking over for Jim Donovan for the rest of this Tuesday evening, afternoon, evening, however you want to look at it. I guess we're into the evening now that it's past 6 o'clock. But I'll have you for the final 30 minutes today. As Jimmy mentioned, Andre not here tomorrow, and then Jimmy will be back in on Thursday, and we'll do the same routine again. I'll take over when Jimmy has to head up to the news. Let's reset a couple of things that we've talked about so far today here on the show, and I guess we'll start off with the new Browns logo, the new helmet look for the Cleveland Browns, along with the new dog pound logo. The rumor started last week about the changes coming to the Cleveland Browns, with this new look that they might have. Well, it comes out today, and I know a lot of people were very upset. A lot of people thought, well, maybe there would be a logo on top of the helmet. Maybe there would be more of a change than a little bit of an oranger, brighter look. The brown face mask, people were expecting maybe a little bit more of a change. To me, the helmet means nothing. Great, you brighten it up a little bit, you add a brown face mask. The part that I'm looking forward to is going to come up on April 14th when the new uniforms are unveiled, and see how they put together that scheme, how they put together the look. Will it be brown and orange with a little bit of gray and white? What will be the fourth color that's rumored out there? A lot of people have it as that metal gray, that metal tier look coming to the Browns uniforms. But that will come up on April 14th, and I think that's when we can have the outrage if it looks exactly the same as we've seen for the last couple of years. But I know when it comes to the Browns, everything is big news, even though today a lot of people were anticipating a big change, and then that came out and everyone was upset about it. So you have that. And then again, as Jimmy mentioned, great, it's a helmet. It's not going to win you games. Put better players here, the uniforms, the helmet, everything will look better when you have more than 4, 5, 6 wins every single year. And I think that's the path that the Browns are going on. And when you look at that, how can the Browns continue to improve? How can the Browns continue to get to the 8, 9, 10 win mark, the playoffs, the Super Bowl, whatever the case may be? You need a quarterback. And we've talked about the draft. We've talked about free agents that are out there. We've talked about Johnny Manziel. Well, the Browns are entertaining a free agent quarterback tonight and into tomorrow with Josh McCown. He's in town today. He'll be here again tomorrow in Berea. The Browns are looking at him to see, well, is this our quarterback of the future? Is this a guy that can be our bridge quarterback? I don't want to say quarterback of the future, even though I just did 2 seconds ago, because he's going to be 36 years old when the season starts. But can he be that bridge quarterback, or maybe a tutor for a Johnny Manziel, or a tutor for a quarterback they're going to draft as they continue on to 2015 and beyond? We'll see if he stays. This is a guy that had a very good year last year, I should say 2 seasons ago in Chicago. Went down to Tampa Bay, really didn't live up to the expectations with Lovie Smith. They cut him. Now he's a free agent and was in Buffalo last week. A lot of people thought McCown was going to sign last week in Buffalo. He left without a contract in Cleveland tonight. They'll visit with him again tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that on tomorrow's Drennan Live, as well as Andre Knott will be in. The other thing going on tonight, the Cavaliers back in action. They're in Detroit, winners of 14 of their last 16 games. They're in Detroit for a 7:30 tip-off at the Palace. And when you look at it, normal starting lineup for the Cavaliers: LeBron James, Mozgov, Love, Smith, Irving. And when you look at the Detroit Pistons side, you'll see Jackson, who they just brought in. You have Tayshaun Prince, who they just brought in as well. Of course, Drummond, and you go down that line. I'm interested to see with Detroit. Remember how bad they were at the start of this season? You go back to that game, what was that, late December here at the Q against the Cavaliers, where they just steamrolled them, where the Cavaliers got beat by 20 points to a team that only had 6 wins at that point at the end of December. You go through the last 2 months, and Detroit, they're up to 23 wins. They're 23-33 under first-year head coach Stan Van Gundy. So Van Gundy has them going in the right direction. They're, I don't want to say in playoff contention, but I guess in the East, you don't count out anybody, because you're going to see a couple under 500 teams make the playoffs. So they thought, you know what, we're in a place where we can improve this team. Let's go out, we'll get Prince, we'll go out and we'll get Jackson, and we'll improve this team going forward, and we'll see what kind of run we can make. We talked about it. It broke about an hour and a half ago. Kendrick Perkins, now officially a member of the Cavaliers. He is in Detroit. It'll be interesting to see if he plays tonight or if they're going to wait, let him get comfortable being with the team, being around the team, going through a practice, going through a shoot-around before they put him into live action. I'm interested to see if he gets any minutes tonight or if they wait till Thursday night and play him against Golden State. When you do see him, he'll be wearing number 3 for the Cavaliers. I think it's kind of interesting. He comes from Oklahoma City. They give him number 3, Dion Waiters' old number. Where's Dion Waiters? Oh, he's in Oklahoma City now. So we got Kendrick Perkins here now. Earlier today at shoot-around, LeBron James, he's had that relationship with Kendrick Perkins. You heard Jimmy talk about it, also Brian Windhorst as well. So LeBron James, your thoughts on the Cavaliers bringing in Perkins?
Well, first of all, he brings a championship DNA. A guy that's been there, knows what it takes to win it all. He brings toughness to our interior, and I think a great locker room guy. All he cares about is winning, and that's very important to our chemistry. It's very important to what we're building here, and we're happy to have him.
So you bring in Perkins, and again, Jimmy talked about it, and we had Joe on, and we also had Brian on to talk about it as well. He's not a guy that's going to light up the stat sheet. He's probably going to be a guy that plays under 20 minutes a game. The reason you bring him in, he's physical, he has 6 fouls, and he can get under the skin of opposing big men. He's that Anderson Varejao role, but being a tough guy, not just a pest. So you bring him in, you add a little bit of depth behind Mozgov, because as we've seen with Mozgov, he gets into foul trouble. So you need a guy that you can rely on coming off the bench. Not a guy like Tristan Thompson, who's playing out of position when he plays the 5, when he plays the center position. You keep him in his normal role. You don't have to move Kevin Love over. You don't have to rely on Brendan Haywood. You have a guy that's a true center in Kendrick Perkins behind Mozgov. So we have that as well. The other big news today out in Arizona, first day of full squad workouts for the Cleveland Indians. First Cactus League game will be coming up on March 3rd. That's a week from today, next Tuesday, when they take on the Cincinnati Reds. And today, Terry Francona mentioned that Zach McAllister will be your starter for that game, which I find kind of interesting. Yeah, he'll probably only go an inning or 2. He's technically battling for that 5th starter spot, where I don't know if he even has a realistic chance of that, but they're going to give him the opportunity. I think McAllister is destined more for a bullpen role with this team, and I think that's where we're going to see him. A guy that's out of options that will have to stick on this team, and I think we were able to see it last year at the end of September. McAllister in that role coming out of the bullpen. A guy that really is only a 2-pitch pitcher, has the 93, 94 mile per hour fastball, has the nice curve. He's more set up, in my opinion, to be a reliever, and I think that's where he's going to be. But the Indians will give him the chance to capture that 5th starter role. But I wouldn't be surprised in 2 and a half, 2 weeks, that you see him transition more into that role as they start to stretch out the starters instead of giving guys only 2 or an inning, depending on the spring training games, as they get their arms amped up. We open up phone lines 866-786-8551, 866-786-8551. We'll take some of your calls when we return here on the Monday edition of Drennan Live. We have an ACC doubleheader coming up for you tomorrow right here on SportsTime Ohio. First game will be at 7 o'clock with the number 2 Virginia Cavaliers taking on Wake Forest. And following that game at 9, Florida State will take on Miami. That's an ACC doubleheader coming up for you tomorrow right here on SportsTime Ohio. 866-786-8551. Gene Winters in for the rest of today's show, which is Tuesday. I know I said Monday on the way to break. I was so worried about giving out the right phone number, I can't even keep my days straight. And I also blame all these snow days. My girls haven't been to school for like a week. They're in the house. I got cabin fever and trying to get them out, trying to keep them entertained, and these blizzard bags are driving me crazy. But that's a whole different issue that we can take up. Let's start with Rick. You're in Campbell. Rick, how are you today?
Good, Gene. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks a lot for the call.
My question is about the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're under the salary cap. We're pretty good under salary cap.
Yes.
But the question is, with that salary cap the way it is, can we keep two people, Ataba Rubin and Brian Hoyer, and still be under the salary cap?
I would think so. When you look at it, Rick, I believe the Cavaliers, the Browns are the third highest amount of money to spend in free agency. I believe they have 25 to 30 million that they can spend. So let's just hypothetically say Rubin would cost you 10 and Hoyer would cost you, I don't know, 7. Right there, you're at 17. So you still have some room to go out, and then you'd have your draft picks to add on. I don't see the Browns keeping all 10 picks that they have, selecting 10 guys and keeping them. I expect them to move a couple of those draft picks to help improve their team. So I would say yes, they can feasibly do that. Yes.
Okay, that'd be good. I'd like to see them two guys come back and maybe sign a couple more. Maybe like, I think Jabal Shearer's up there. He could be let go in a couple weeks, and maybe a couple other guys also. But I'd like to see them retain at least Brian Hoyer and Ataba Rubin if they can.
See, and that's going to be the interesting part. And I agree with you. I wouldn't mind keeping Sheard, but now that he can go out to the free agent market, I'm interested to see what kind of contract that he can demand and what team is going to pay him to be that potentially that outside linebacker, or if they put a little bit more weight on him, put him back down as a defensive end and have him blitzing off the edge. I'm interested to see how much the Browns would actually pay for Rubin with his injury history as of late. And the same thing with Brian Hoyer. From all things, you hear from Patton last week, Farmer as well, even after the season. It doesn't seem like that they're real interested in bringing Brian Hoyer back if he's even the best option of the free agent quarterbacks.
Yeah, like I said, and if there is somebody else out there, I'd like to see if there's a blue chip quarterback that would be out there that would be feasible for like a starter.
No,
that would come in right away and start for them.
No, Rick, and thank you very much for the call. And this is how bad the free agent market is for quarterbacks. You have Mark Sanchez, a Jake Locker. It's so bad that Brady Quinn is training to make a comeback, because he can see how bad the free agent class is. Maybe you look at the draft as well and say, well, maybe it's not that great of a draft stock for quarterbacks this year. Jimmy talked about it earlier. When you look at Hundley and Mariota and Bryce Petty, guys that could have potentially came out last year who decided to stay, and their draft stock has dropped. They could have potentially been first-round draft picks last year, decided to go back to school. I think you're seeing how bad the quarterback batch right now is, where you have a guy like Brady Quinn trying to make a comeback. George in Irontown, you're up. George, how are you today?
I'm just fine.
Good. Thanks a lot for the call.
Hey, well, let me start by prefacing I'm old, okay?
Okay.
So this is all about the uniforms.
Uh-huh.
Is there a real big push to change the uniforms? I mean, other than the new owner wants to have new uniforms, I don't understand why the need, since they've had the same uniforms since pretty much 1946.
No,
and I always liked them because they're just so clean. The white uniforms, I think, are awesome. Mm-hmm. And they're just clean. They look good. And I'll tell you what, down here in Ironton, the high school team has the exact same uniforms, except it's orange and black, but it's the exact same uniforms as the Browns. So I always thought that was really cool. But now the Browns are going to probably look like a softball team, because that's what all these new NFL uniforms seem to look like. They're kind of, I don't know, out there.
Well, I hate to say it, George. I think it's more of the Browns trying to connect with the younger generation. You have to have the bright uniforms. You have to have the stylish. You have to have the uniforms that stand out, that people will remember. And unfortunately, it will take away from the older fans that lived through 40, 50 years of having the same look, same uniform every single year.
Yeah, but, then I think back to Buffalo did that. They changed back to their original uniform, and then you got teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers. They keep the same uniforms. That's good for them. It's worked for them. I just don't see the necessity other than to maybe sell some more jerseys or something.
And that's it. I think, and George, thank you for the call. You got to get to modern times. You mentioned the Yankees and the Dodgers. Only difference is those teams have won championships. And I should say World Series. Not to take away from what the Browns accomplished back in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s when they were winning championships every single year. Unfortunately, the modern-day football fan discounts that for some reason because it's not the Super Bowl. They were winning and dominating before it was called the Super Bowl. Once the Super Bowl came in, the Browns are one of 4 teams that have never been to a Super Bowl. And I think people look at that and say, well, discount everything they did before that, when you can't discount what the Browns did before it was called a Super Bowl. 866-786-8551. We have one more segment to go before we wrap things up here today. Andre Knott will be in this chair tomorrow as we take you through another Drennan Live here on SportsTime Ohio. We're getting closer as everyone has arrived down in Goodyear. The baseball, the sound of baseball, it's in the air and it's nearly here. Indians' first spring training game is 7 days away from today. That's 1 week, and we'll bring it to you live right here on SportsTime Ohio. Indians versus Cincinnati Reds live from Goodyear, Arizona, 3 o'clock, March 3rd on your home for Cleveland Indians baseball, SportsTime Ohio. Sticking with the baseball theme, let's try to sneak in Jake from Columbus. You're up, Jake. How are you?
Hey, Gino, how are we?
Good. Thanks a lot for the call today.
Hey, buddy, as long as they're playing baseball in Arizona, it's spring. Do you feel it?
Oh, absolutely. I don't care that it's minus or 5 degrees, whatever it is. Seeing the pictures and the interviews with Ashley, baseball is here now.
I am so in.
Yo, I can't wait. And this is something that we've been looking forward to, obviously, since the end of last year. And as they brought in Moss and made a couple of moves in the offseason, it's about time to get this thing underway.
I am so ready to see Moss patrolling right field. Sorry, David Murphy.
Oh,
But,
yes.
hey, and I like Murphy too. But Moss gives us 25 out of that right field hole, baby.
Right, and having a short porch to right field once the summer comes, he's going to be launching them to right field. Hey, look at what he was able to do in Oakland. A pitcher's park, hit 25, 30 home runs every single year.
Absolutely, and it was such a nice signing. I really liked it.
Yes, and you gave up a double-A, a kid from Akron. Yeah, maybe you can use him in the future, but when you want to win right now, you go out and you make that move and you bring in an all-star. And Jake, sorry to cut you short. We're a little short here on time as we wrap up today's Drennan Live, but that's where we're at. It's baseball time. We're going to check in more with Ashley tomorrow. I believe she's going to have an interview with Michael Bourne coming up tomorrow, and I believe she said Jan Gomes. That might be tomorrow or Thursday. I'm not quite sure, but that should be coming up as well. Andre Knott in the chair tomorrow. I'm Gene Winters. I'll talk to you from the booth tomorrow. Have a nice rest of your Tuesday evening. Have a good night. Welcome back to the final 30 minutes of Drennan Live here today on this Thursday. I'm Gene Winters, taking you through these final couple of minutes. And I think I'm just going to piggyback on what Jimmy's been talking about a lot today. No, not the Browns, but the big matchup tonight down over at Quicken Loans Arena, over at the Q. Is it an NBA Finals preview tonight as the Cavaliers host the Golden State Warriors? Warriors come in 44-10. Cavaliers, of course, 36-22. Earlier today, we were down at Shoot Around, and we heard from LeBron James a little bit earlier with Jimmy, but of course, Steph Curry. We've heard a lot about him. Jim Barnett talked a lot about him being the 2 biggest stars in the NBA. We talked to Curry a little bit earlier, and we got his thoughts on tonight's matchup over at the Q.
I mean, it's a big game. Obviously, we know they're playing well. I have a full strength back and gotten used to the new additions. So, different team than what we played in the Bay Area. So we got to be, on top of our game. Hopefully, start off well and be aggressive tonight and keep the momentum we built in DC after that little one-game loss to start the road trip.
So there you hear it from Curry. And when you look at it, you go back to that last meeting, and I don't want to harp on it too much because, one, we're short on time, but I also know that Jimmy hit on it as well. But you go back to that meeting, January 9th, I believe, when the Cavaliers were without LeBron James, before they really made their moves to improve this team, when they were in their big losing streak, when they were close to being 500, or maybe at that time were even under 500, lost to Golden State 112-94. As you see, they were one game over 500. But at that time, Golden State, they were rolling. I mean, they only have 5 losses in the last month. And you look at it since January 10th, Golden State 15-5, Cavaliers 17-4. Golden State in that time averaging 112 points per game, Cavaliers 106. Both teams were shooting about 47% from the field. So it's going to be a very interesting game here tonight. And you go back to it. When you look at Golden State, it starts with Klay Thompson. Fantastic performer. 50-point game earlier this year. 37 points, I believe, in one of their games in the third quarter alone, which set an NBA record. But it all comes back to Steph Curry and what he can do on the court. We've talked a lot about Steve Kerr today, their first-year head coach, coming in from being a broadcaster, stepping into a very good situation with a lot of talent on that Golden State team. But earlier today, Steve Kerr had a lot of praise for Steph Curry.
I think his modesty, his confidence, I often compare him to Tim Duncan because it's a rare combination, a rare quality to be humble and sort of arrogant at the same time, if that makes sense. Steph is arrogant with his game and incredibly humble and modest off the floor and with people and with the media and with his teammates, and that's a powerful force and makes my job really easy because he leads by example, he works, everybody else kind of does the same thing, and we develop a lot of momentum as a result.
So things will get tipped off just about 2 hours from now over at the Q. And when you look at the starters for tonight's matchup, obviously the Cavaliers are going to throw out their same 5 that they have basically since the trade and LeBron James came back from his 2-week hiatus. As you look at it, James Love, Mozgov, J.R. Smith, Kyrie Irving, and over for Golden State, Harrison Barnes, Green, Bogut, Thompson, and Curry. I'm going to be very interested to see, because J.R. Smith, of course, not known for his defense, known more for a shooter, how David Blatt's going to work his rotation today, because, of course, Amon Shepherd, more of the defensive stopper for the Cavaliers, how they get him more involved if Thompson starts to go off and has one of his normal games, if they try to bring in Shumpert to slow him down just a little bit. Cavaliers, with the Bulls' loss last night, moved into the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference as they continue to climb up to number 2. We've talked about it for a couple weeks. I doubt they get to number 1 as they're 10 games behind Atlanta with, 25, 30 games still to go. So I doubt that's going to happen. But Toronto, right there. They're right there with Toronto to potentially take over that number 2 seed, where I think a lot of us thought they would be number 1, number 2 seed. I think a lot of us thought it would be a battle between Cleveland and Chicago at the beginning of the year, but Atlanta 45-12 atop of the Eastern Conference. And we flip it over to the West. Of course, Golden State sits atop of the West at 44-10. Memphis, Houston, and Portland rounding out the top 4 over in the West. So check it out tonight. Fox Sports Ohio, 8 o'clock. Fred, Alley, and Austin Carr will have the coverage. Of course, Cavaliers Live will come your way at 7:30. So we can continue to take your calls on that. Also tonight, more basketball. Ohio State will host Nebraska in Big Ten action as Ohio State continues to build towards the NCAA tournament. You look at a couple of projections. Some have them as an 8 seed. Some have them as a 9. I've seen a 7. I've seen a 10. So as long as they keep winning, go ahead and take care of business tonight against Nebraska. You potentially have, Wisconsin still on your schedule coming up, which will be a very tough game for them. If they can stay in it, they wouldn't have to make too big of a run in the Big Ten tournament to lock down one of the spots in the tournament. And then tomorrow night, maybe the biggest game in years for Cleveland State as they host Valpo with first place on the line. A 10 o'clock tip-off. Jimmy talked about it a little bit earlier. Cleveland State, the Horizon League, they want TV time, so they're playing a 10 o'clock game tomorrow night. Winner will take over the number 1 spot in the Horizon League. Once that tournament starts, the number 1 seed will host the Horizon League tournament. So Cleveland State should take care of business, I hope, tomorrow. They lost to Valpo earlier in the year on their court. They come to Cleveland State. Big matchup for Gary Waters and the boys. 866-786-8551. You can tweet at us at Drennan Live. When we come back, we're going to head back to Arizona as Ashley Collins caught up with Trevor Bauer. That will be on the other side of the break here on the Thursday edition of Drennan Live. Brandon Dubinsky and the Jackets take on one of the original 6 tonight when they face off with the Canadians. Blue Jackets live at 6:30. Face-off will come your way at 7 with Jeff and Jody. Check out foxsportsohio.com for the channel assignment in your area. So check them out. Blue Jackets, Cavaliers, both on Fox Sports Ohio tonight. So check it out, foxsportsohio.com. See what channel you can check out both of those matchups. We'll get to the calls in one moment, but we want to take one more trip back down to Arizona. Ashley Collins has been doing a fantastic job all week long, grabbing as many interviews with Indians players as spring training and full squad workouts. Everyone getting down to Goodyear as of Tuesday. So she has her last interview. She's going to file from Goodyear today, and she was able to catch up with another one, of the Indians starting pitchers.
Trevor Bauer is certainly a student of the game. During the offseason, he traveled around the country picking the brain of pitching gurus. He said he would throw for 3.5 hours a day, lift weights for 3.5 hours a day, and then on his free time, he said, he would study films and montages, and he even came up with his own scoring system to judge his performance. But something that is very intriguing to everybody is the way he warms up.
Get loose and get my body functioning in a way that I can go out there and compete at my optimal level. And so it changes a little bit, and from start to start and from year to year, but the principles are still the same.
A lot of people are excited for this rotation this season, the consistency that will come with it. This group of guys, how great is it to be back and to see all this consistency and people like Gavin Floyd, obviously Corey Kluber's fantastic.
Yeah, it's, we have so many options, so many really quality starters and guys that go out there and work hard and compete every day. Nasty stuff. Everyone throws really hard. It's fun to watch. I mean, for me, from the dugout, I'm sure it's fun to watch from the stands and for the fans and stuff. And it's fun to be a part of. We all feel like we have a really good chance to go out there and win this year, and that's a really good feeling to come into spring training with.
And Trevor Bauer said pitching occupies his brain almost every moment of the day. So this season, something that he's going to try and work on is just simply not thinking so much about his pitches.
Thank you, Ashley. And Bauer, again, another key piece in that Indians rotation. A guy that started last year down in AAA Columbus, worked his way into the rotation, stuck, found a way, continuing to work with Mickey Callaway, and you heard Ashley talk about it. Putting himself through his own drills, his own scoring system to get himself in shape and ready for this year. A guy that watches a lot of film, analyzes his game to help improve going forward. And I think it's going to be a big year for Trevor Bauer. And if the Indians want to contend and win the AL Central, a lot is going to ride on that young man's shoulders coming into 2015. 866-786-8551. I promise we take your calls when we return here on Drennan Live. Catching all new beer money tonight here on SportsTime Ohio, and that's going to start right after us at 6:30 here tonight. Tonight's episode will feature the Mayfield Paninis and also Ironwood in West Park. So check out Beer Money tonight as soon as we're done here on SportsTime Ohio. Welcome back in, Gene Winters, taking you through the final 30 minutes here of Drennan Live. I want to thank Jim Donovan, who sat in Tuesday and today, and also Andre Knott yesterday. Bruce will be back with us on Monday, so we'll get back to Social Spotlight. Remember, Monday's going to be a normal show, 3:30 until 6:30. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, spring training baseball right here on SportsTime Ohio. First pitch all 3 days coming at 3 o'clock. Cuyahoga Falls, Bill, you're up. How are you today?
Hey, Gene, how you doing?
Good. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for waiting.
Oh, no problem here. Just a couple things. I understand the Cavs are pretty hot, but don't you think that we need to clean up the turnovers and stuff? I know LeBron had 9 against Detroit.
Yes.
I mean, I think we're going to end up in the second spot, but I think we need to clean our turnovers up.
No, and I think that's something they're obviously going to continue to work on. But I've noticed that a lot. When LeBron's playing the point forward position, however you want to describe it, when he's bringing the ball up, he gets sloppy at times. I believe that both of the big men, both Tristan Thompson and Mozgov, at times have stone hands where they're not catching the ball and it's fumbling around and going out of bounds. You were able to see it a couple nights ago, and I don't want to put too much of it on James Jones either because he hasn't played a lot. He's getting more playing time now with Marion out, but you'll see him in the wrong spot where a pass is coming and he's 2 steps away where guys are used to certain players being in those spots. But yes, turnovers are something that the Cavaliers have to continue to work on to clean up.
Well, I agree. I think our defense is good, but I mean, I've seen LeBron when he comes in and he gets in traffic, he tries to make a pass, and I agree with you with Thompson, and they have like stone hands once in a while, you know.
Right, and that's the problem. And when you look at it, and Bill, thank you very much for the call. It's continuing to be a work in progress, and you hate to say, well, they're still trying to gel and trying to figure each other out. Well, I think Love, Irving, LeBron, the original group that was here on opening night back in October, yeah, they're starting to gel. But now you bring in a Mozgov, you bring in, for all intents purposes, James Jones because he's playing more now, a Mozgov, a Shumpert. Those guys, you're trying to gel them in and continue to work together so everyone is on the same exact page. When we come back from break, Frank in Toledo, you're going to wrap things up here on Drennan Live, but that's after a quick timeout here on the Thursday edition on SportsTime Ohio. Cavs Warriors coming up on Fox Sports Ohio, coming up at 8 o'clock. But Jeff and Campy will get things going at 7:30 with Cavaliers Live. Fred, Austin, and Allie will tip at 8 o'clock. It's a tune-in and win night over on Fox Sports Ohio. Make sure you tune in for your chance to win Cavaliers tickets during the Warriors-Cavaliers game over on Fox Sports Ohio. Things get started at 7:30, tip at 8 o'clock. Frank in Toledo, want to get you in before time runs out here today. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. Thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you glad for taking my call.
Sure.
Jim Donovan, a little while back, talked about cheerleaders.
Yes.
And that the Browns never had any. But I remember going down there in 1946 when they were still in the old All-America Conference, and they did have a cheerleading team. I'm not sure what they were called. And I don't know if they played the entire 4 years that the Browns were in the All-America Conference, but they did have cheerleaders. I still remember watching them.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that, Frank. And when Jimmy was talking about it, we looked it up, and maybe it's since they've joined the NFL. Maybe they haven't had them. I'll have to double check the history, but there's only 6 teams. That's 6, 5, 6, 7. 6 teams in the NFL right now that do not have cheerleaders. So they're one of 6 remaining. Before we wrap things up, wanted to mention the Blue Jackets worked out a trade today, acquiring right wing David Clarkson from Toronto. They gave up Nathan Horton. So Blue Jackets Live will come up at 6:30 over on Fox Sports Ohio. Cavaliers Live at 7:30. If you're confused, check out foxsportsohio.com for the channel listing in your area to check out either of those 2 matchups coming up. Bruce back in the chair on Monday. I'll talk to you from the booth. Have a very nice weekend. I'm Gene Winters. Have a good night.